Hi guys, this is New Sensei. Many people start out with target recurve or Olympic recurve can be put off by the high prices of modern target risers, which can cost over several $100s just for the riser. Because of that, many people gravitate towards the lower end of the cost spectrum. The big name in this case would be SF or Sebastian Flute, and they have several models which are very popular with beginning archers, including the SF Premium and the SF Forge Plus. The bottom end of this line of bows is the SF Axiom, in this case the SF Axiom+L, which is the most recent upgrade to the Axiom series. And the Axiom bows are the cheapest target risers you could probably find, which are compatible with ILF limbs and have all the functions of a regular target recurve. You can find other recurve bows for lower prices, but they often don't have the same functionality as an ILF riser, and this is by far the cheapest. It is no longer sold under the SF brand name. As you may know, recently SF and Win&Win have broken their partnership, so Win&Win now manufactures and sells the Axiom as the WNS or Winners Axiom. So same name but different label. That does mean that you won't find this in shops apart from surplus stock, which they're trying to get rid of, and you'll probably find this as the Winners Axiom. Let's see how this bow looks and handles. The Axiom is an aluminium riser. There are actually many versions of the Axiom, and you will often find them labeled interchangeably on store pages and searches, which can make it really confusing. There's the Axiom Plus, and the Axiom Plus Lite or Axiom Plus L. Even I was confused, but the riser clearly says Axiom Plus L, so that's settled. The main difference is that the older models were solid aluminium risers. The light model, as the name suggests, is lighter due to a significant removal of excess weight by cutting out holes in the riser. The key selling point of the Axiom is the low price and the ILF compatibility, meaning that it can use any ILF limbs, giving you more options when buying new limbs or moving up in draw weight. Unlike the very cheap beginner club bows, even the aluminium ones, the Axiom has all the functionality of a modern target recurve bow. It has bushings for sights, clickers, plunger, and stabilizers, including top and bottom mounts, which is more than what most entry-level risers have. The grip on the Axiom is actually pretty decent. In fact, it's the same standard SF style grip, which is identical in shape and feel to other SF models like the Premium and Forge Plus, and in turn is quite similar to the Win&Win bows. This is fairly surprising, as many entry-level bows have mediocre grips, while this may actually be the best part of the Axiom. It's comfortable in the hand and you can feel the right pressure points, making this a good bow to learn with. My impression right now is that it actually feels fairly well balanced. One of my common criticisms with the low-end bows, especially the solid designs and the really heavy magnesium or aluminium risers, is that they feel like you're holding a brick on a long riser. It doesn't feel very well balanced. But the Axiom Plus L is actually quite an improvement. I think I've held the Axiom Original before, and that is quite heavy, but this, it definitely looks like the weight's been removed by cutting out these shapes. So in terms of look, feel and balance, it's actually a lot better than I thought. It's not heavy in hand. The riser itself is solid, as an aluminium riser should feel. I imagine this is why it's beginner friendly. You just hold it in place. It's weighty enough where you don't have that torque or shake, and it actually looks pretty decent. The Axiom bows are often packaged with Axiom limbs, so in this case we have the SF Axiom Plus. These are your basic wooden limbs with fiberglass laminate. These are very cheap limbs. Many people who start out in archery will probably use Axiom Plus limbs because they're dirt cheap. And for a good reason, as I do recommend in several videos, that if you're starting out, you will go through limbs at a fairly rapid rate as you get stronger, as you get more confident in your technique, and you start going up in draw weight. You don't really have to spend big money on low poundage limbs if you know you've been moving up in a few months. So the Axioms are good starter limbs and sometimes good transition limbs. These ones are 30 pounds, so I'll be using this as part of the test. Alright, so here we have the Axiom+L with the Axiom Plus limbs. As it is bare bow with no extra weights, it doesn't feel that bad. I mean, I would expect a bow like this to be a lot heavier, but it's fairly light actually. So in terms of balance and controlling it, it's okay. Do note that as with a lot of bare bows, it's quite top heavy, so if I just let it sit on my hand, you notice that it'll kind of tip backward like that, and every time I release, it's going to kind of really not try and knock me out. I think this is a very common bare bow problem, but that's a very noticeable balance thing right there. So that's quite a big top bias. So let's send some arrows down range. I'm using the bow as configured for its shooter. So he's using Eastern Apollos, which are a nice cheap carbon arrow. There's a 950 spine. I won't be using the clicker because again this isn't my bow, it's not set to my length, but we'll see how it shoots as configured for the original owner. So that's the first set, considering that I'm not a bare bow shooter. It turned out alright. The feeling of the Axiom+L, like I said before, is quite surprising. It sits nicely in the hand, and this is largely because the SF grips are quite consistently made. So the shape of the grip is very much like most target recurves, especially the wind designs. So I felt quite comfortable using it. If my hand comes naturally into it, it sits nicely at a full draw. I felt the pressure point in the right place. And throughout the entire shot process, I felt I had full connection with the bow, which is saying a lot. I often have a hard time connecting with lower tier bows or lower cost bows because they're not particularly well designed for balance and feedback. But I actually had a good time shooting this bow in its bare bow configuration. So let's add on the stabilizers and sights and shoot this in an Olympic configuration. Alright, so we're using SF Axiom+ stabilizers. Everything's blue, that's the color scheme of this particular owner's bow. Let's see how it handles. Well, that was interesting. Again, my form is a little sloppy. As I said in my last video, I haven't been shooting for around 3 months, and it's kind of hard to get the same form and feeling with an unfamiliar bow. The sight's different, the arrows are different, the bow's different. But otherwise, you know, the bow itself feels okay. The addition of the stabilizers makes a pretty big difference, as you can probably see and hear. I felt that when shot bare bow, it didn't sound bad, but you could probably notice a bit more of that vibration and shock. I definitely felt it. I actually find it hard to use with stabilizers. There's not that much extra weight with the stabilizers on this particular bow, but I felt that the weight was very centered on the riser itself, and I kind of felt a bit more of that hard feedback, that vibration. It's kind of dampened, but still kind of there. I don't think the construction of the Axiom+L is particularly great at absorbing the vibrations, and this is one of the symptoms. When you hear a loud bow, then there's excessive vibration that isn't being absorbed, and therefore the bow loses some energy and the arrow doesn't come out as quickly. And that's one of the trade-offs with price versus performance. A more expensive bow will generally be better at absorbing vibrations, and they will generally squeeze out a bit more performance out of the limbs and out of your arrows. So the Axiom+L, from what I've had so far, it is a pretty decent bow for its price. It is a perfectly fine bow for someone who is just getting into the sport and doesn't want to spend an excessive amount of money. It is a fairly reasonably priced bow. It does the job. It introduces you to the Olympic style of archery, the freestyle shooting. And it has all the features that you need. It mounts everything. It allows you to learn with the bow. And for most intents and purposes, if you buy this as your first bow and you train with a coach or at the club, then you will see some good progress. This is a bow which will last you up to a year or two, depending on how often you shoot, how serious you take it. It is a functioning starter bow. It is the perfect example of a starter target recurve bow, thanks to its cost and its design. Like I said, its main shortcomings are that it does feel a little heavy, not as chunky as other bows. In fact, some top-end risers are much heavier. This one has been lightened due to its improved design, but it does still feel kind of heavy. It is an aluminium bow, and some people feel a little weighed down by the aluminium design because they are heavier than carbon. But this can be friendly to beginners as well. It's going to help you keep the bow steadier, and for someone starting out, you want stability, and that's generally what the lower end bows can do. It keeps you stable, whereas the high end bows tend to be a bit less forgiving. You have to deal with torque a bit more. You have to be a bit more sensitive about your hand placement, whereas this is a bit more forgiving. You can have more errors or form problems and still shoot decently with this kind of bow. I don't really see this as a really competitive bow. I think it's a bit too dull in terms of its feedback. You don't really get a good sense of exactly what you're doing right or wrong. It's just a very solid bow. You point at the target, you do your shot process, and it comes out. It's a bit hard to feel the exact balance and torque sometimes. But that is something which you'll pick up a bit more as you do more shooting. As far as entry level goes, I think this is a fair recommendation. People who want to spend a bit more can probably go for the premium or the forged options. Previously the SF Premium and SF Forged Plus, now they're labeled as Winners Premium Alpha and Winners Forged Alpha. They're a bit more expensive, the same sort of thing, a bit more expensive, slightly more intricate design, slightly better performance if you can measure that. But if people recommend this to you, then this is actually a fairly safe buy. This wouldn't be my favorite bow, but if I wanted to spend the least amount of money for a complete set, this is a safe recommendation, and I would agree that the Axiom+ is a good starter bow. Anyway, this is New Sensei. Hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.